شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون صدق الله العلي العظيم. Wazee wangu, mama zangu, ndugu zangu, I take this opportunity to greet you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, all praises and thanks be to Allah, the Lord of the heavens and the earth and all that exists, the Lord of the universe, who gives the best reward to the conscious and great loss to the transgressor. We praise Him and seek His help and forgiveness. We seek refuge in Allah from the evils of our own selves and from our wicked deeds. Whomsoever has been guided by Allah, none can misguide him. And whomsoever has been misguided by Allah, none can guide him. I bear witness that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah alone. I further bear witness that Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, is his true prophet and messenger, the leader of the messengers and guide of the faithful. Defining the objectives of Ramadan, as I did yesterday in my introduction to these lectures, we look at the ayah that I read when I started my lecture today. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyamu kama kutiba alal ladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. O ye who believe, fasting is prescribed for you as it was for those before you, so that you may attain consciousness. So you may be able to ward off evil. Fast a certain number of days, and the ayah goes on till the end. But my topic or my subject is globalization and its effect on society. Approximately 1400 years ago, in a religio-commercial town lying between three cultures, there lived an orphan, noble but poor. Grazing his uncle's camels, he wondered and wondered at Allah's bounties and man's egotistic ingratitude. His good brought him riches and trust. His good character, that is. At 40, his concern for his people brought him divine communion. Message persuading, warning, reassuring, promising, explaining, softly compelling. This guidance, over 23 years, transformed the myriad tribal Arabs into heralds of one humanity. To be more precise, the life that the whole of East African coast, the Middle East, Persian Gulf, and the Far East, the life we were living, or our forefathers were living, was what could be or can be called the first world civilization. Europeans have gone to lengths to want to prove us as barbarians, and they being from the first world. But the reality is just the opposite. We were the first world. And yesterday I mentioned some issues that I promised I'd come and prove to you by substantiating using authentic evidence. I mentioned to you about globalization and what it's meant to be. They say it's a process of interaction and integration among the people, companies, and governments of different nations. A process driven by international trade and investment and aided by information technology. This is their explanation. But if we have to agree to their explanation, then you'd see it as we go by in these lectures that we were more globalized long ago before they ventured into our life. And this starts with the periplus of the Eritrean Sea, a book for circumnavigation of the Indian Ocean, as it was known then as the periplus of the Eritrean Sea. This was the name, Eritrean Sea, before being Indian Ocean. The book was written way back in AD 45 to AD 60. And the book mentions the trade that went on between Arabs, Asians, Chinese, and Persians with the indigenous people of this littoral, this area, coastal area of the East African coast, deep south, Kilwa, Mozambique, these other sides, Sofala, Mafia, Madagascar, Seychelles, to South Africa, Cape of Good Hope. We were doing business ever since AD 45, that is mid-1st, 2nd century. So we were globalized before even them knowing anything about globalization. Proof is all around us, the heritage, the culture, the tradition that is within our lives and places that we live had been globalized long ago. But when I was explaining to you about what globalization means in its real sense, then globalization entails industry, finance, economics, political, information, technical, and cultural. However, as we were living in our lives, from those days to the 21st century, they came in with the last crusades. And I'll talk about this as we go on in these lectures in due course. and prove to you why do I call it crusades. Yesterday I mentioned, and I asked those who are around and are educated to note down and go search within web doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery. This entails a papal bull. A papal bull is a notice, a notification. It's sort of a certificate given to rulers of Europe, Spain and Portugal. One was Christopher Columbus, to go to the West, that is Europe and America, Christianized whomever he'd find there, and if they don't want to be Christian, then he has every right to kill them. The other was given to Portugal, and there comes the name Bartholomew Diaz and Vasco da Gama. I'd like to ask you a question. How many of you know what transpired in Kilwa for 200 years consecutively? How many of you have read or learned in school about what Vasco da Gama did to the people of Kilwa? For 200 years consecutively. If none has learned anything, then I ask the second question: why is it so? Same with us in Mombasa. We went through the same. In fact, historians say what the Portuguese did to the people of Mombasa and Kilwa has never been done to anyone else on earth. Let me give you an example of what they did in Mombasa and the coast of Kenya. The last ruler of Mombasa is called Ahmed bin Msham, but people famously know him by the name Sheikh Mvita. What the Portuguese did is slaughtered his head off, took it to Goa in India, put it on a lance and heralded with drums and trumpet, like, look at this guy who said we'd never enter Mombasa. This is what we did to him. And the head has never been brought back till today. They did the same to a ruler of Lamu called Bwana Bashir. They slaughtered his head off in front of his people and then quartered the body and hang it on a wall in town, and told the people of Lamu, if you ever bury a piece of this body, the whole town will be slaughtered like what we did to your ruler. Then further, they did to someone my namesake called Stambuli. They cut his head off, took it to Goa, then played music, just to tell the people this is what we do to other people. Now imagine what they did to the women and children of that town. For 200 years, I repeat, consecutively. In Kiswahili we say mfululizo. Now, kutiba alaykum as-siyamu kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. I asked yesterday and I'm asking today, Sheikh Stambuli, what has this got to do with what you're telling us about globalization? And I answered with an answer that says it has everything to do with Kutiba alaykum as-siyam, and Kutiba alaykum as-siyam has everything to do with globalization. Because we are looking for taqwa. We are looking for consciousness of Allah. Some translate it as fear. We are not looking for fear. We are looking for consciousness. for looking for reverence towards Allah. Then came a question that, what is taqwa? Don't we need faith before consciousness? Say no. Neither is one good without the other. You need to be conscious to be able to be faithful. How can you be faithful and you're not conscious? We went deeper into globalization, but I won't move there for now because I want to use this time now to prove what I said yesterday. I don't know if we can go back to the screen, Tafadhali. I want to show you, because yesterday I mentioned to you about people we had to do Surah Al-Fatiha for them. How many of you young guys who are in this hall know a book or a journal, for that matter, known as our entitled Highlights of Bilal Muslim Mission of Tanzania 1965 to 1986? How many of you have seen it? Have you seen this book anywhere? Young guys on this side, have you seen this book? Do you know? You remember I mentioned him yesterday when we were looking for people to say Fatiha for them, right? Do you know these guys? Al-Hajj Muhammad Ali Megji, ex-chairman of Khoja Shia Isna Ashari Supreme Council. The other one is Al-Hajj Mullah Asghar Ali, M.M. Jafar. Hujjatul Islam, Said Akhtar Rizvi. Right? This is another one from Mombasa. Al-Hajj Ali Muhammad Jafar Sharif. He's a founding member who, even at his old age, he was still active. Hajj Sayyid Abul Qasim Al-Khuy. Then these are the historical photos that it beats my consciousness that most people don't have these things. How come a person like me from Mombasa, I do have these things? This is a book that every follower of this madhab has to have, to know the pioneers who kept it going, who established it, signed a constitution to give you the right that you have by guidance from Allah, the Prophet, and the Ahlul Bayt. This is where it started. Temeke. Look at how the situation was. This is where the center started, and this is how it was. How many of you know about this center? Do you know this is how it started? These are the first students to go abroad and learn the religion of Islam in its proper sense. And their names are there. I won't read them all, but I'm just trying to show you. This is Hajj Muslim Habib, treasurer from 1979. Group photo, Mwanza seminar. There was a seminar in Mwanza. Bilal Muslim Mission of Tanzania. Sayyid Muhammad Mahdi al-Musawi Shustari, Sauti ya Bilal, 1967 to 1976. These are the faces that you people should be knowing. Well, this book, I have a soft copy of it. I might leave it with the center here, or I might give it to individuals, whichever way possible. But I feel this is a book that everyone should have to know where we're from, where we are, and where we're heading to. Apart from this, I mentioned to you the Yogyakarta principles, and I quoted the introduction, first paragraph of the introduction, and I promised I'd show you the evidence. This is the Yogyakarta principle. Is it visible enough, or should I enlarge it? Principles on the application of international human rights law in relation to sexual orientation and gender identity. I repeat, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kutiba alaykumus siyamu kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. Siyamu. Refrain from what? Drinking and eating only. No, refrain from evil thinking, refrain from evil feelings, refrain from everything that annoys Allah. That is why these things lead us to checking at globalization in its proper perspective, Islamic perspective. Are we ready to sort of hug globalization and let it come all in us? Just straight in without us considering, wait a minute, where are you taking us to? Yogyakarta principles are principles on the application of international human rights law in relation to sexual orientation and gender identity. Sexual orientation, gender identity. So what is the real meaning of these things? What is sexual orientation and what is gender identity? These are 29 principles. Right? There are 29. I can share this with you too. I'm just passing by just to prove what I talked to you about yesterday so that we move on with the subject. This is what I quoted yesterday. The first paragraph, introduction to the Yogyakarta principle. I hope it's clear for you to read. Let me enlarge it a little bit more. Are we clear there? I quote again, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. All human rights are universal, interdependent, indivisible, and interrelated. Sexual orientation and gender identity are integral to every person's dignity and humanity and must not be the basis for discrimination or abuse. End of quote. We go to what do they mean by saying this? Now we go to the meaning of sexual orientation and gender identity. There is the meaning in reference. Number one means sexual orientation is understood to refer to each person's capacity for profound emotional, affectional, and sexual attraction to and intimate and sexual relation with individuals of a different gender or the same gender or more than one gender. Two, Gender identity is understood to refer to each person's deeply felt internal and individual experience of gender, which may or may not correspond with the sex assigned at birth, including the personal sense of the body, in brackets, which may involve, if freely chosen, modification of bodily appearance or function by medical, surgical, or other means, and other expressions of gender, including dress, speech, and mannerism. Am I understood? Are we together on this? In other words, this is the freedom that's coming. This is liberalization. It comes as a liberal economy, gradualistic. It comes to liberal individual freedoms that don't need anybody else's consent, including children. So when we talk about globalization, it's good to involve the Quran because it is Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Again, taqwa comes in. It's a guidance for those who are conscious. Problem with us is that most of us who sit on this side don't want to learn more than the Quran and Hadith. And these people have institutions that take care of these issues. Now look at what I'm showing you now. We talked about this. This is Chamber of Commerce and Industry for the LGBTQ in the US. Contributing over $1.7 trillion to the US economy. Who can ignore $1.7 trillion? This is business for the LGBTQ group only. This is the interagency report I mentioned to you yesterday. This is interagency report on the implementation of the Presidential Memorandum on Advancing the Human Rights of LGBTQI+ persons around the world, 2022. When it's an official policy of the US government, it's official policy for the US government to fight for human rights for the LGBTQI+ community all over the world, in their own words, and I'll quote. Yesterday I mentioned to you about this thing, but I didn't go deeper. I said I'd prove to you by authentic evidence. Now let's see what the policy talks about. In its forward, and I quote, on February 4th, 2021, President Joseph R. Biden Jr. issued the Presidential Memorandum on Advancing the Human Rights of Lesbians, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer, and Intersex, in brackets LGBTQI+, persons around the world. Building on the memorandum issued by President Obama in 2011, it directs executive departments and agencies engaged abroad to ensure that US diplomacy and foreign assistance promotes and protects the human rights of LGBTQI plus persons around the world. How many of us know that the US had an embassy in Zanzibar in 1833? How many of us are aware that British had an embassy in Zanzibar in 1840? And how many of us are aware the French had an embassy in Zanzibar in 1844? What gives me morale and keeps me happy is the age bracket that I'm seeing here. I'm very much fond of talking to the youth, the younger generation, because I'm aware of the power that these evil entities have vis-a-vis our youth, or against our youth. But none of those who sit where I'm sitting right now talks to them about what time it is. And if they do, they don't have the youth language for these people to understand. They are too traditional. They are very much molded into speaking in mosques, masjids, and houses. And the youth are technologically aware, informed, and there's so much of the evil power that confronts them even when they are looking for something religious. That's why I'll keep on repeating, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kutiba alaykumus siyam. Kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum. They went through the same phrases, they went through the same phases of life, and they were warned before us. They were warned because those who are in the position of guiding the masses are entertaining the masses more than informing or guiding them or teaching them. Please tell me if I'm wrong. What I'm showing you is just new to you all. You didn't know about this. You know about LGBTQ, you know about Wimpy Kid's Diary, but you don't know anything. You still don't know anything. It's too huge a force. It's too big a force. It has corporate power. You see, the economy is 1.7 trillion. This is Chamber of Commerce for the LGBTQ community only in America. $1.7 trillion per year. Now think of the organizations that have been forewarned that this is our foreign policy now. We have to fight for these guys' human rights anywhere we are on earth. And that's the government policy, signed by the President of the United States, Joe Biden, Obama from 2011. Within 10 years that we were being entertained and not being informed, these guys have made it big. And they are all out now. Find the interagency report on the implementation of the Presidential Memorandum on Advancing the Human Rights of LGBTQI plus persons around the world and read it for yourself. I talked to you about an institute that had $6 billion budget. It takes care of 10 other organizations below it. The 10 organizations are taking care of 400 other organizations, and the other 400 are taking care of 3,000 organizations. be they NGOs, be they CSOs, or whatever. It's called Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. Now listen to the following. Shaping the moral, spiritual, cultural, political, and economic decline of the United States of America. My next question, if they do this to the Americans, what will they do to us as Africans? These are institutes. My question is, where are our institutes? What is their policy? Kutiba alaykum as-siyamu. So as we are fasting, should you only be fasting by not drinking and not eating? Does fasting allow us to think evil, to feel evil, to listen to evil, to speak evil? No. So what should we do? We should use Ramadan, like we are doing right now, and talk sense into our heads, into our hearts, because this war is hearts and minds. This is where they are aiming. They aim at our hearts and minds, and they know what they are doing because they have institutes that are acting as think tanks, reporting on an annual basis. We have girls who come here on exchange program. You let them go into your houses. You put henna and pico on them. But they have diaries at night that they sit down in their rooms and write down whatever they saw for the whole day. When they get back home, they don't go back to the community. They are rehabilitated. They are debriefed somewhere far from the town until everything that you put into them is put out. Then they are led back to their community. Now, Tavistock Institute is just one. Then I mentioned to you about endocrine disruptors of hormones. You remember yesterday I said hormone disruptors called endocrine, some call them endocrine. This is a totally long subject about endocrine, and I'm sure, inshallah, God guides me, I'll find some time in our 15 days of lectures. I'll keep this somewhere because I'm aiming at our mothers and sisters behind there. They're the ones who are closer to this thing. It's plastics that we use, with their plates for food, cups for drinking tea, plastic bottles for giving milk to our babies, have these chemicals that are hormone disruptors. We'll go deeper into this, talk about these hormone disruptors and what are these chemicals, and how much damage can they do within a short span of time. But in talking about problems, as we end up our lectures, we'll be talking about what is the solution, which way forward. My simple, brief answer is we have to stop where we are and start thinking about institutionalizing our lives. We have to give back the spirit to the mosques, the masjids, so that they really become institutes to guide us towards prosperity, towards taqwa, towards consciousness. Never to be used to entertain us, to tell us what we feel like we love to hear. No, they should tell us what we are supposed to hear, not what we love to hear. Khatibs, imams should be guiding us. That's their job. And a masjid is an institute. That's how the Prophet used it. Right now, like I said yesterday, I'm repeating it today, go to any mosque in the suburban areas. Ask the imam, ask the khatib, 5 meters circumference. How many orphans do you have, let alone help? How many physically challenged do you have around 5 meters circumference to the mosque? How many widows? Then go to the next question. How many do you help among them? And it's not your money. Tell us, please, donate this, give to these guys. We talked yesterday about how many clothes that don't fit you anymore. Why are you keeping them in the cupboard? Would you like us to put them for you when we bury you so that you wear maybe in Barzakh? What are they doing in your cupboard? And you don't know whether you be wearing them anymore. How many bed sheets do you have at home? How many years you've been buying curtains for your windows? Can you give one to this poor lady here who has no family? Ramadan is the month of giving, rahmah. This is the first 10 days. What do we give to the poor? Dhil Qurba, wal Yatama, wal Masakin, wabna Sabil. Now, to achieve لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. This is where the ayah comes in. Problem with us who sits on this side is to translate the Quran to our suiting. It suits me. I like to tell you this is what it means. But the Quran is broad speaking. That's why I said, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Concerns what we are speaking about. Globalization. So how do you attain taqwa? How do you attain your sawm to be perfect? If you could be taken away, if you could be driven by what globalization has brought close to you. I don't mean to say don't do what globalization is bringing close to you, but the divine audience then in the 7th century was a divine audience that compiled into 114 surahs the Quran. Often misrepresented by foes, misunderstood by friends, constitute the Quran, these 114 surahs. But they are always misunderstood or mistranslated. When fully appreciated, it will become the true words of God towards man. But how do we appreciate the Quran? Most of us, if it's not Ramadan, we don't even touch it. We don't read Quran normally. Very few do. And Allah significantly puts His wordings in these ayahs of Quran, and He talks to you profoundly. He talks to man, Surah Al-Baqarah. Let me quote. Alif, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alif Lam Mim. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. So Alif Lam Mim, this is a book about which there is no doubt. Listen to the wordings. A book upon which there is no doubt, a guidance for those conscious of Allah. Who believe in the unseen. الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة. Establish prayer. ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. And spend out of what we have provided for them. Stop. So you establish prayer, you spend, but not something that's planned. You spend because you feel you give with this hand so that this hand don't know what you give. This is how you give. But as an institute, once you give to an institute, that would be statistically providing you with what is needed of the data of those who are in need, so that you program and plan of how you are giving, what you are giving, to whom you are giving. The younger generation is supposed to be giving you the data of how to give. وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِنْ قَبْلِكَ وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. And who believe in what has been revealed to you, O Muhammad, and what was revealed before you, and of the hereafter, they are certain in faith. Are we of this category? If we are, then why is the situation as it is in Dar es Salaam? Street families, 10 years ago, were there street families? Criminal activities, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, were there criminal activities? Weren't you walking freely anytime? And I'm not talking about this just for Dar es Salaam, it's in Mombasa. Street families all over, because we give aimlessly. You know, okay, maziwa, kate, like this, you know. Just to finish up my topic today, have you ever wondered why someone can come with a buibui or a kanzu, stay outside a masjid, wait for you to pray and come back and say, please, saidia? Have you ever wondered and thought of asking the guy or the mother, like, excuse me, before waiting for me outside here, did you come inside the mosque to pray with us? Have you ever asked anyone who's asking you to help in terms of cash or food, whether he or she is praying? Because who can give better between you and Allah? Let me wind it here. My time is up. But remember, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Saum is to make you better than what you are before this Ramadan. Saum is to give you a chance to change, rehabilitate your thinking, your feelings, your talking, your moving, your eating, your everything in life. It's a chance within a month to change your way of life and be better. Change your way of life so that you don't avoid anything without reason. Change your life so that you don't annoy Allah anymore, and be on the right path so that He guides you. Be conscious of His presence and what He's given to you without asking. We'll go into that deeper when we move in these lectures on why should we totally dedicate our lives to Him only, no one else. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in Islam, thank you for coming this evening. If I did any mistake, said anything that annoys you, I'm sorry. If there's anything good for you to go with, please feel free. Let's pray for one another. We are given a chance again tomorrow to live, breathe, and meet again. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.